Good morning, and thank you again for coming back to Birth Your Medicine with Lesley. And today it is Birth Your Medicine with Lesley. So thank you for watching all of my other chats with everyone who I've brought on. And one of those women, she posed a question to me and she said, have you done a video where you have shared your own medicine and your own story? And I was thinking, wow, no, I haven't. And it sort of brought up some things to the surface. I thought, I don't know if some of you have ever done that. Maybe it's been in like coaching classes or spiritual classes, and they ask you, make a list of the people in your life that you prioritize and the things that you do for them. And doesn't have to be in any particular order. And I remember doing this. I can't remember what class it was. And, of course, I start listing off, my kids and my family members and my clients. And then the next question they pose is, um, where are you on the list? And I remember looking and thinking, wow, I didn't even put myself on the list, let alone, us having a conversation about who should be at the top of that list. And so when that guest posed that question to me, I was brought right back to that. I thought to myself, interesting that I feel I can open up this space and hold space and have these beautiful chats with these other individuals who have shown up on Birth Your Medicine with Lesley, but I haven't yet done an introduction or shared my own story. And so that sort of lit a fire under my butt. And I decided, yeah, that's right. It's time to put myself at the top of the list and tell my story. And maybe that will also inspire, just like all of the other stories have, inspire others to do the same. So maybe that was your first inspiration from listening to this is, are you on your list? And two, um, where do you land on that list? Do you prioritize yourself? So this channel was created to, it was very much from my heart. And this theme of Birth Your Medicine has been in my heart for a very long time. Um, Many of you know that I was a social worker for 17 years in various different types of organizations, from child protection to geriatrics to the cancer center and oncology. And in all of those places, I learned so much about myself. And in 2014, when I thought that I was going to be a social worker at a cancer center for the rest of my life because I truly, truly loved it, something shifted in me. And that was the year that I had my last child, my third, who's my son. And I feel like he was the spark or the catalyst among many of my clients who were at the cancer center to begin to reevaluate my life. And I find it hard to believe that it's been over 10 years ago now. I feel like that went by so quickly. And I'm so grateful for all of those lessons, all of those years. And I just remember feeling like everything was just unraveling and I didn't know what to do. I was falling apart. I was so used to control. I don't know if any of you will if this will resonate. I was so used to control, but I realized I needed that control in order to be surviving. It was like, okay, I knew I had to be at daycare at this time, and I had to be at work at this time, and I had to not answer the phone after 4 o'clock because I need to be back at that daycare at this time, and food on the table, and this, and everything is just this regimen and this routine. So if I wasn't in control of that, I felt out of control. So that might be your next takeaway from this. But what started to happen was that physically my body was just not healthy anymore. And I just knew I needed to do something different. And I talk about next week, I have a guest on and we talk about these baby steps. And I had to start the baby steps. And so that was Sundays going to Bliss Yoga. It was in my neighborhood, and I would go there every single Sunday, which, P.S., I did not and still do not like yoga very much, but I loved the silence. I loved the heat. I am a Leo. It is Leo season now as well. And being in that heat and just doing mostly yin, some stretching and some just quiet time to myself, things started to unravel. And I started taking my meditation training. And then pretty soon I started having these like thoughts about Reiki. And at the time, I'd never even had Reiki before. I've never even had a session before. And I reached out to someone and they said, "Oh, yeah, like you could check out this place." And so I went and boom, 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 took all of my Reiki classes. And I just knew, I didn't know what it was for. I had no idea what any of this was for. All I knew was maybe this is the first time I'm just, even actually just having this realization right now. It was the first time that I was actually maybe putting myself first and taking, these weekend trainings and leaving my kids at home and doing something for myself. And in the meantime, who doesn't love, receiving Reiki and doing meditation with others and connecting with like-minded people? And yeah, it was beautiful. It was just opening up this gateway. But what I remembered is I would go off to these weekend things and I would feel so good being in them. And then I would have to go out into the real world and then apply it. And that was where I certainly lacked. And I talk about that with my clients sometimes. They say, "Lesley, when we come into this studio and you facilitate a session for us, it feels so amazing." And I try to remind them that it's just about learning to integrate that into our lives. Sometimes that's the hardest part. It's not, we can learn a lot about ourselves at a session, but then how can we integrate it into our life? And so I was struggling with that. I was like, how do I make these two worlds go together? And the most interesting thing that started to happen for me is I feel like if we're going to go back years and years and years to when I was a little girl, I feel like I've always just had this innate knowing of things. And whether someone said something, I could tell that that wasn't the truth. Um, whether there were things going on that no one was talking about, I would generally know that, feel that. And so, although that didn't always feel good, I think that that probably has been, those things have probably led me to exactly where I need to be. I was always one of those people who people just came to. I had so many guy friends and girlfriends who they just knew they could reach out and I could hold space for them. I didn't know that was the word back then. It was just showing up for people, listening to people. Um, yeah, and I look back and I just think, wow, okay, I didn't even know those qualities about myself, but they certainly came in very, very handy, not only in my social work career, but in what I've created now. And so I feel really blessed that, some of those things that maybe been around safety and keeping myself safe and needing to know my surroundings have really led to opening up maybe my intuition. And after I did all my Reiki and I did my meditation training, I was still working at the cancer center. I had most of the stuff I was just doing because I knew I needed just something for myself. And I suddenly started to get this niggling same thing mantra. I'm going to call it a mantra theme over and over. And it was, if you build it, they will come. And for some of you who've watched this, some of you probably heard this story from me too. I was just thinking about the Kevin Costner movie. I'm like, if I build what? Because right now I live in the middle of Edmonton in the city and I have nothing to build. So, what does if you build it, they will come even mean? And I would hear it. I would see it in the most random places. I remember flying on an airplane. I had to go on a work trip to Toronto, which social workers don't often have to go on work trips, but it was I was also doing the drug access coordinator position at that time. And they're like, oh, you have to fly out to Toronto and do these meetings and learn this thing. And I remember getting on the plane. It's the first time I got to like do work travel. My ex husband at the time with his job would travel a lot. He'd often be traveling. And so it was like, whoa, I'm on an airplane, I'm going on a work trip. It feels pretty fancy. Um, and the magazine in the front pocket said, if you build it, they will come. And it was about it was some sort of travel advertisement. And I took a picture of that and I still have it in my camera roll to this day because I was so surprised. I'm like, what is this? And I was always aware of it, but I never forced anything. And then I remember getting close to a time in my job where I just felt unhappy. I was going to work every day, but I could just feel like I was working against something. I didn't want to be there. And I've known that feeling before. Um, I'm a manifesting generator in human design. So when I'm done with something, I'm usually done with something. And I could feel that feeling. But I just didn't know what the future entailed. And so one day I just Googled, if you build it, they will come. And to no surprise, there were many pictures of Kevin Costner and the movie Field of Dreams and baseball players and baseball fields. And then I kept scrolling down and I saw this program. It said, if you build it, they will come, building your spiritual business 2.0. And I went to that website numerous times and it would say date to be announced, date to be announced. And I thought, oh, okay, this must be what I'm supposed to be in. And so I kept checking back. And in the meantime, I had this habit, and some of you might be able to relate, that anytime I went through something hard in my life, I would go to a medium or a psychic. And I'd done it through breakups when I lived in Saskatchewan. I go through this really hard thing. I book an appointment with I loved her. She was this beautiful woman in Moose Jaw. She was probably 80 years old back then in the early 2000s. And I would go to her place and she would read cards and, she would share. And I'll get more to that a little bit later, about how sometimes just getting that information and then not trying to do anything with it, just letting it play out. And it always brought me so much comfort in those times of need. And so guess what I did? I booked an appointment, not with her because she has since passed. Um, but I booked an appointment with a medium, and she was saying to me about how it's time, like things are shifting, right? And some of my ancestors were coming in and they were sharing, some messages with me. And yeah, I'll never forget this point where she was just listing off some of these things that she saw me doing. And I'm just like, wow, this doesn't seem like where I'm at right now. But I didn't have a clue what it was. And she said, she literally said, without me saying anything to her, it's like when you know you'll build it and they will come. I'm just like, whoa, okay. So I began working. She had a program at the time. I began sort of working through that program with her and just looking at the things in my life around what is it that I wanted? What is it that, where did I want to go? Who did I want to be? And I just knew, I'm like, this is not the place, for me anymore. And so one day I went back to that website and there was a program, a healing program. And I knew that I was going there for myself. It was like a 2-year program. And yes, you were learning shamanic practices and ceremonies. I did not bat an eye at the cost. It was 2 years and 8 or 10 modules at around $1,000 each. And I just sent in an application. I didn't think about the cost. I didn't think about the time. I didn't think about the work that it would be. I just felt like spirit was like, had led me there. It was like, you weren't there for if you build it, they will come. You were there for this program. And yes, the people that I met and the ceremonies that I learned, I call it the place, I call it a lot of remembering. I feel like there was a lot of remembering in that program and a lot of sessions, a lot of therapy. And from that, also a lot of practicing, working on others. And I started to see these patterns where maybe they were kind of being overlooked in the medical system that I was working in. I'm like, what about these root causes? What about these people's past lives? What about these people's belief systems? And I started to look at the not just the person, but like everything. And I saw it was working for me. I saw I was looking at all of these different things within myself. And I just knew, like, there was a point where I just knew that I was working towards leaving social work and doing this type of work. But it was never forced. It always just flowed. I think that there was this space where I began to trust myself again and trust that it wasn't just about quitting something and moving to the next or selling the house and moving to Korea or um looking outside of myself anymore. It was that I really had started to come back to trusting myself, trusting my knowing that when something feels off or when someone's telling you something, that's not necessarily all of it. So I continued with that program for almost 4 years because there was a second part to that. And there was some, I mean, lots of people know when we enter into these spiritual organizations and spiritual communities, there can be a lot of dysfunction inside of them. Um, this is where I started to realize that I did see things that I thought this piece where it's interesting, where if we're getting something out of something, we don't necessarily want to see what we're seeing. And I realized this thing about myself where I really wanted to like complete this program and get the information and start up my own business. And so therefore I could kind of put these filters on and pretend maybe there wasn't some of these other unhealthy things that were going on within this community until I couldn't. And it's the best thing that happened for me because some of those things came to light in that community. And it was a big learning lesson for me because I really, really, really had to sit down with myself and go, why is it that you think that someone gives you something, that someone else has something that you don't? And I wondered, would my medicine rights be taken away? Would I lose, my intuition and, my gifts, my relationships? with the people in that community, my relationships with the animals and the elements and all of the things that we worked with. And I just knew it. It was no, it was absolutely not. It's like you are it, and everyone who was there is it. And it's what you do with that. And it was a big lesson for me. I put out so much gratitude for the situation happening so that I could actually, for once in my life, say, I can be so confident that I can leave something that I wanted so bad, knowing that it was the best thing for me. And I remember that fall just knowing that there was something else because I was realizing that I was going to all of these different programs, and a lot of them are saying a lot of the same thing, but a lot of them were creating this space of maybe a dependence versus an empowerment. You know, oh, take the next thing. Oh, sign up here and you get 50. Oh, take the next thing, right? And excuse me, that just didn't it didn't fly with me anymore. I realized I believed that everybody had their own medicine, their own gifts, their own teaching, and that yes, I needed to learn some of these things. I needed to learn these definitions around fate and destiny, and all of that would sort of play out into other things that I would take. And I'm not saying I'm clearly not here saying um, to never take programs because believe me, I am going. I feel like I'm going to be a lifelong student as I'm just completed, a couple of years ago, my family constellation work, and I am in my somatic experiencing training. So there is a plethora of information out there, but it comes back to this space of integration. How do you take what you've learned and then begin to integrate it into your life? Because I realize I'm not meant to just be in service of everyone else. And maybe that's another takeaway, for all you healers and hand workers and body workers and estheticians and hair cutters. um, we're not meant to always just be in service. Is that everything we're taking in, there's a piece of it for us. And so my marriage was rocky, my health was rocky, my career was rocky. All of these things were beginning to crumble, which many of you who probably are listening to this know that's usually when change is about to happen. So I left my career. I call it retirement because I never like to say that I quit anything because I usually give 150% in everything that I do. Um, and I loved being able to spend this extra time with my kids. But I also realized this piece of me knew that in order for me to be a better mom, I needed something for myself. And so I started in the room that we're in, that I've now created into a laundry room, was my first healing room. And I began seeing people, began doing sessions, began doing Reiki, began doing card readings. I just started to have fun and play with it. And I started to see so much shift and so much change in people who had had medical things happening for many years in their life. And we do some of these ceremonies and these sessions, and I see them like walking out a completely different person. And, it's just like, this is why I love this work because I have no idea. It's the mystery, it's the magic. I just hold space for spirit and the mystery and the magic. And by doing that, these amazing things happen. So I never pretend to say, this is me at all. It is, um, I'm just the facilitator of it, just like I am in Birth Your Medicine. And that was a big, big component to Birth Your Medicine for me. And so, yeah, fast forward to the summer after sort of leaving that community and not knowing, what I was going to do and where I was going to be and where was I going to get my next teaching from. And my kids and I took a solo vacation out to Albus National Park, which is on the northern tip of the Shuswaps. And it's an off the grid cabin, a walk to the beach. Blueberry Springs, if anyone's interested, is the most gorgeous place. And not much cell service, which is great. And I remember taking a notebook, and there were hundreds of hummingbirds, and the kids would hop into bed. And I would go out and I would sit on the deck in nature, and I just started to write. I just started to write. I was always a journaler. Again, going back to high school, university, I always journaled. And somewhere along the lines, I wasn't doing that anymore either. So I sat out there, and the modules just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. And I knew what I wanted to base it off of, because in 2018, I had the opportunity to go to Peru and for 2 weeks work with the Kiros in Peru. And every day they did a carpe for us, and they did a despacho ceremony for us, which is the rites of the Muni Kai, which are based in my birth year medicine, because it's all about coming into relationship. And of course, it was in a different language, but I remember just knowing this feeling that I had in my body every single carpe, every single ceremony that took place every single day. And at the end, in their language, and the translator was saying, take this home, take this back to where you live and share it with people. And I just thought to myself, like, how would I do that? Like, I don't know the process. I don't know what they were saying, really. It was a feeling in my body. And I now know what they were saying. It was like, take this back. It is Aini. It is this love and expansion. And so when I got back, again, spirit just dropping these nuggets in my lap. There was the rites of the Munikai training. And so I just dove in. I decided, okay, I need to hear about this in English. I need to know what each one of these Carpe rites are. And it was a beautiful online group with people all around the world. So I got to meet people from South America, North America, Europe. It was amazing. Sometimes we forget that online isn't as connecting, but it was. And so as I sat on that deck, outside of that cabin in nature, and just the water rushing next to the house and the hummingbirds just coming to the feeder, I just let it flow. I knew I had no idea what any of it meant, but I just knew that, again, I felt like this thing is called birth your medicine, because I wanted people to be able to come back to themselves, to birth themselves, birth their medicine, like to make that evolution of themselves. And so in that, I had no idea as I was writing. I was creating a 10-month program, which was based on the gestation of, birth. And in each of those modules, the 10 modules, those carpes were built in. So everybody receiving the 10 carpe rights in those modules. And I knew I really wanted to go back to the basics. I wanted to go back to the nervous system. And I remember sitting on that patio and just thinking that all of these trainings that I took, it was necessary, even though sometimes I was questioning, like, oh my gosh, how much money am I spending on all of this? And should I have taken this thing? It's just like the other thing. No, I needed to, because it was all going to be part of the experience. But the one thing that I always felt was missing, especially from my long year programs, was safety, was your nervous system, was saying no, was getting to know yourself and your attachment style. And so I knew that that's where I wanted to start in Birth Your Medicine, because how can we be opening up ourselves to spirit and intuition and source if we don't even know our own cues of our nervous system? So it started there. I started to build module one around the nervous system, module two, that what would it feel like to be supported? Geez, what would that be like? And so module two flew in there about our ancestors and what it feels like to have our ancestors support us. And it literally, again, I'll use the word unravel. It just began to unravel on that paper. And I came home and I just began to write and write and write. And I put it out there. I made all the fancy Canva posters. I made all of the worksheets, how I wanted this to go. I wanted to be on Zoom. One thing I know about myself is I've always loved to teach. I love to teach. Um, and two, I also love one-on-one sessions. And so I wanted to bridge the two. I wanted to have a mix of both. And so I wanted to have 2 hours once a month online, and then everybody who is in that group online, I wanted them to know that they each were going to have a one-on-one session. Because yes, it's great to be in a group, but you're also a unique individual in that group. And so I built it, I birthed it. It's my baby. From a place of knowing what I love to do. I love teaching and I love doing one-on-one sessions. And so I built the program based around where I feel passionate. What do I love doing? Because when I love doing it and I feel passionate about it, people are going to feel that. And so I put it out there and I said, yeah, I'm going to do it. And so I began advertising on my page and I began advertising everywhere I could. And it was like crickets. No one was coming. So that whole mantra around if you build it, they will come. I'm like, maybe I built the wrong thing. Oh boy, I think I built the wrong thing. I put so much time and so much effort into creating this, and no one is coming. And so I remember sitting at my kitchen table in my house, and I was, still working on some of the behind the scenes stuff. And I was just asking spirit, like, why? Why can people just throw stuff out there that doesn't look like they put any time or effort or heart or passion into? I was feeling a little bit resentful. Um, and people show up by the hundreds. And I'm putting this out. It's literally coming from my heart. Like I I love this. I can't wait to teach it. I can't. And right then and there was this moment where Spirit said, "Are you willing to be a student of Birth Your Medicine?" And it was sort of like a bit of a slap in the face. I just knew, I was like, yeah, like I'm not the teacher of it. I need to be in the class. Yes, I'm going to be the facilitator, but I need to show up as a student because there is a lot of learning for me in these modules as well. So I made that shift. I said, yes. I said, even if no one shows up, if not one person signs up, then I'm going to do the 10-month mentorship. Every month, I'm going to go on the call. I'm going to teach myself about my nervous system, about my ancestors. I'm going to give myself the carpes. And it was in that moment when I said that you would not believe it. And these crazy, I mean, you might call them crazy, you might call them weird, manifesting, I don't know what it is, have happened numerous times in my life. And the moment I made that shift, boom, 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 people started to sign up. And I think in my first one, maybe some of you are watching, um, I think that I had nine ladies in that one, all because I was like willing to just show up and be a student as well. So, were there kinks? Yes, there were. Were there things that could have been added? Yes, there was. But it was The right people were there because I trusted that they were going to give me the feedback that I needed in order for this to go. And so it was a bit of a pilot project. And from there, I remember them saying, hey, you know what'd be really helpful is having a workbook to go along with this, not just the videos, but if we had our own workbook. And that just lit a spark right under my butt because for a lot of years, I was not in my creation mode anymore. And so, good old Canva, I sat down and I created this workbook to go along with the program. And it was fun. It was fun coming up with different activities and different journal prompts and different ideas. Um, because for me, I want to go back to that space of integration. I've done it before. I've signed up for so many online courses, and if it's live, I'm in it. But the moment that it's over, I'm done. I'm out. And also, if it's not live, then I've also signed up and then never completed it. So, you might be forking out $1,000 or $1,200, and then all of a sudden you find yourself not participating. There's certainly no integration in there. And that's what I didn't want. So I wanted to at least be able to chat with every single person who wanted to come into the container and join Birth Your Medicine so that they knew what they were getting into, that this was going to be going deep within themselves, um, the commitment level that it was going to take, that it wasn't just hopping on a video and then, going about their life, that there was going to be this integration period in between. And yeah, it was fun to start to make that workbook to go along with it. And so the next cohort, they had that workbook to go along with it, and it was a hit. It was a rave. I loved it too. I loved being able to teach from it. And so, yeah, since 2019 or 20, maybe, um, it has been it's been my baby. It was like I called this Birth Your Medicine, and I felt like this was me birthing my medicine. And yeah, maybe there was some ego in there. I'm like, this is the best thing since like sliced bread and chocolate chip cookies. Like everybody should be taking this. And oftentimes Spirit would put me back in my place and being like, are you still going to be a student of your work? That's right, I am. And I have been blessed over, the last probably 5 or 6 years to sit and be a student with many, many beautiful women who have taken the course. And the other thing that I love to do is just sit back and observe and just see, do these individuals, because it's hard for me to see my own growth. Do they see their growth? Do they see the shifts that are happening in their life when they're committing to creating relationship with everything in their life? And yeah, it's been amazing. And I think I'm going into August 1st is going to be the next registration for, I believe it's the sixth cohort, so the sixth year. And I've loved taking, like I said, those little tweaks, those little criticisms, those little nuggets from some of the students to say, hey, what about this? Have you thought about this? Ooh, this might fit in nicely here. And um, the other thing that was really interesting, because I was a bit opposed to just having as a self-led. I thought, no, I only want to teach online, in person, online, and then I want to do my one-on-one sessions in person. And I think COVID, if I can say that there were any gifts out of COVID, made me realize that online it can be just as powerful, creating community and learning. And some people do really, really well when they're in a self-led course. So I decided to hire a hmm, what shall we call her? Like an editor, Lindsay. If you're watching this, Lindsay saved my life. Tech is not my this is the other great thing about COVID. It gave me a lot of time to work on tech, created my website, created my scheduling system, but I wanted this thing to be available. And so I hired her and she took everything I had birthed and created and she put it into a online platform for me. And so that's where Birth Your Medicine self-led online program came from. And it's been amazing. Those women work through the module on their own time, at their own pace, and they still have their one-on-one session with me, whether that be on Zoom or whether that be in my studio. They're getting the same magic. And so any one of them, I'll probably have some of them on too. Any one of them would probably say that they chose it because it worked for them, it worked for their schedule. And some of them like to take a slower pace, whereas the online sort of in-person group, group one, um, it can sometimes the pace of it can move a little bit quicker. People can always go back and watch or go at their own pace, but the self-led really helps people to choose that for themselves. And so I don't know. When I come into every year, when I come to August, it always starts in August and ends in, sorry, registration opens in August, starts in September and ends in June. I feel that magic come again, that excitement of like who's going to be in the next container. And yeah, one of the clients, one of the students asked me like, "Are you excited for the next one?" And I always am. And I think that there's this piece or this nugget that I've learned about myself over the years is that if there's ever a time where I sort of become kind of complacent with things or things lose their magic and mystery, then I know it's time to move to something else. But every single time, it depends on who's in the class. This last year has been amazing because the individual that I was working with has just opened up this perception of many other different things for me. So um, it's not just about what people are learning from me, it's what I'm learning from them as well. And the other biggest thing is it's helped me to realize, and I think this is why I wanted to put this out, is that it's about being in a lifestyle. And that was what the missing piece for me was, is that it's not about taking the next class and the next certificate and doing the next session for someone. It's about, are you ready to live a lifestyle from this? That when you go out to the mall, can you integrate the two, like your spiritual self and your 3D walking around at the mall self? Can you access the tools in the same place? And when I began my journey, I couldn't. I thought that I could only do that when I was in my spiritual container or in my safe container with my woo-woo friends. And I've now come to realize that no, this is a lifestyle. This is a way of living. This is a way of being. This is a way of treating people in your life all the time, coming into relationship with everything, which sometimes means the sticky, gooey, yucky stuff that we don't necessarily like either. But um, yeah, that's Birth Your Medicine. And this channel, I'm starting to realize that there's this theme that's bigger than me. This coming again back around to all these years later, if you build it, they will come. And that Birth Your Medicine doesn't just have one meaning anymore. It's the online group context. It is the self-led context. It is a way of living. And now it is this channel. And how this came about was I had a friend who was going through some difficulties, some financial difficulties, and as some of you know, maybe who are watching this, being an entrepreneur is not for the lighthearted. I mean, there are some months where it's like you just wonder if you can even buy groceries, and then there's another month where you're like, okay, yeah, we can pay all the bills now, right? And so there's this roller coaster. And for me, that's taught me a lot. I know that I want some consistency in my life, and I know a lot about my nervous system now because when she had reached out to say, "Hey, like, would you be interested in purchasing my services? Because then that might be helpful to grow your services." I looked at my financials and I was like, it just was not going to work. But that also didn't feel great for me because I knew that, this person was in a space where they were also experiencing one of those valleys within, being an entrepreneur. And I thought, what is it that I can do? And I've always been someone who, maybe some of you will notice this on, Instagram and social media. I'll always share any of my colleagues or friends or, because I don't believe in competition, people who do the same work. I'll always share their stuff because if I can't participate, if I can't go, I can share and it might get to the right person. And I realized I was like, what if I just created a channel on YouTube called Birth Your Medicine? And I invited people on to just come and have these talks. Here I'm talking to myself today and talk about like what led them to where they are today and how did they know that they wanted to be a photographer or a writer or a healer or a teacher or overcome an illness. There's everybody has a story. Yeah, I wanted a place where people could just tell their story. And if that then brought them some followers or a new client, um, maybe even just some awareness in their life, then that was all right for me. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted it to be exposure for the person who was showing up to share their story and be vulnerable to share their story. And I also wanted it to be a place where people can listen. Maybe they're learning something about themselves. So maybe they get curious. Curiosity is my new word, certainly from somatics and family constellations. But yeah, I just want to create a space where people can get curious, like less thinking that we know something and more, let's just be curious about it. Let's be curious about the emotion. Let's be curious about the feeling. Let's be curious about why is that person looking at me like that? Can I get curious again every single time I put out Birth Your Medicine? Can I get curious about how it's going to evolve? So, yeah, that is my story. There's been a lot that has unfolded. And in next week's episode, you'll hear I'm having a conversation with Kim, who is the next guest after me. And we were talking about how wondering if we did all of these things because something in our life is going to happen and we're going to need these tools. And I remember being very scared, thinking that, like, what if I'm doing all of this work to unravel all of these different pieces of myself because I'm going to need it because something bad's going to happen in my life. And I've recently just thought, why? Why would I need that? Because literally every day something could happen, like a flat tire or, you know, anything. Your hot water heater breaks down. Um, yeah, the mosquitoes. So it's it's the integration of all of that work. Like, how do you respond to all of those things and those surroundings? Like, do you automatically move into anger right away? Do you kind of take a deep breath and go, okay, this situation has something to teach me? And I realized that is exactly why all of these things have come into my life is because more often than not, I can sit back, not to say that I don't get charged or that spark doesn't get lit or I don't get triggered. I do. But I can look at it from a different perspective. So, yeah, being a student of my own creation has taken me through a divorce. It has taken me now through raising teenagers, which is very different than raising toddlers. Um, it has taken me through being a solo acreage owner. It has taken me through being an entrepreneur. And so, again, when these things start to like feel like this, it's like I can just be at either end, pulling and going, actually, it doesn't need to be this. It can be like this. And that is, for all of you that know me, you know, I talk with my hands a lot. My hands are always here and moving them. And that's just the best way I can explain it is that those hills and valleys, for me, just being a student, have taught me a ton about myself. So this was my year of being seen, um, showing up, walking my talk, doing my thing. And I hope that if anything that you take away from me sharing my own story is just trust yourself, come back to yourself, trust your intuition. You might not know right away what any of those little niggling things, these mantras or these suggestions or these nuggets from spirit mean, but trust me, they will eventually make sense. They've all made sense for me. And I'll finish off on a last story. I remember that beautiful medium when I was going through a breakup. I was living in Regina. I was heartbroken. And I remember sitting at her table and she pulled a card. She said, "It looks like you're going to be traveling east. And it's not a vacation, although you only have a couple of bags with you. You're going to be staying for a really long time." And she says, "You're going to be going, you could go from here to here, but you're going to be going like a long way around." At the time, I just thought to myself, like, I have no idea what she's talking about. Like, I have $0. I'm now, I'm owning my own house and I'm in a career that I feel is like depleting me every single day. That was child protection. And yeah, I was just like, okay, let's see, what that will be. And I'm trying to think the timeline on that. That was probably 2003. And sure enough, a woman at work started to talk to me about how she had just went to Korea. And she had taught English in Korea. And you could travel all around. You get paid to teach. You have your own apartment. She's listening, and I'm just like, huh, I'm curious. And so I'm like typing in, you know, I go through the whole recruiter process. I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is interesting. I own my own house. I have a government job, which, if anyone was raised by baby boomers, you have security with your pension. You have a security with a well-paying job. You have security, certainly with a government job, and you own a house. Like Lesley, in your early 20s, mid 20s, like you're already like pretty successful. Like you're up there. And I'm like checking in with myself, like, and I'm miserable. I'm absolutely miserable. Like, can I sustain this for the rest of my life? Like, or will my life be shortened by this? And I was like, those are all just things. And this is what I mean when I make a decision, it just happens. I just do it. And so I didn't want to pay money to a realtor. So I listed it on my own. I was a very independent woman at the time. I've learned to balance that out a little bit. Um, and so I listed it on Free. I don't know if any of you remember that. And way above the asking price of anything that was in the neighborhood. And I did it. I was a single woman selling my house, and I sold it to a single mom who wanted my house over asking in the neighborhood. And again, at the time, I did not have the language for spirit or nudges or signs, or knowing that everything was just working out for me. And I didn't know why when I moved out and I was driving away with the last load of things and handing the keys over, I had no idea why I was crying my eyes out because I had made this choice. I had made this decision. And so there I was getting on a plane all by myself in my mid-20s, flying to Korea. And I was going to go and I was going to teach and I was going to make money and I was going to travel. And those were seriously some of the best times of my life, meeting people from all over the world. My super best friend, who I wish we lived next door to each other, Ashley. um, but Spirit was setting me up on the right track of all of those little things were falling into place. And it wasn't until I was living in Korea for probably a good 6 months that I remembered back. Oh, I know what it was. I just remembered just in this moment. She reached out to me and she said, I'm just wondering if you finished those books that I gave you. And it was the Celestine prophecies. It was the first and second book. And I had packed them and I had brought them to Korea with me. And I knew, I was like, there's a reason why I need to read these. And in that moment, I realized, oh my goodness, this is what she was talking about. Like 2 years ago, she said, you're going to be flying very far away. You're going to be staying a long time, but you're only going to have a couple of suitcases. And, even she was confused. She's like, why would, if you're going to move somewhere, why would you have a couple of suitcases? But I did. I was moving to Korea. My plan was to live there for a year, and I only had two very large, like hockey bag suitcases. And I was just thinking, like, well done, Spirit. Well done. Here I am. Like, let's just be um present with where that goes. And yeah, I guess that's the story. I've been just sort of trusting the nudges and the nuggets and, the great things that have come from that, the not so great things that have come from that. But there's always been a gift on the other side. And so if anything in life, if this is my purpose, if birth your medicine and getting to be the student and the facilitator of Birth Your Medicine does is helps people to realize their bigger purpose, the signs, their relationship with themselves and everything around them, and just living life to its fullest, saying yes when it's a fuck yes, and saying no when it's a fuck no. Um, that's what I want for people. I want to stay curious about the magic and the mystery. And if anything, I hope this episode of getting to know me maybe a little bit better, whether you're watching me for the first time. I am raw. I have no lights, action, camera. That is how my videos are. That is how my relationships are, and no filters. um, Authenticity. And I hope for those of you that haven't met me, we get to meet and create something together. And for those of you that I do, and those beautiful women who said yes and trusted the nudge from Spirit. Like, I don't even know what this program's about, but I think I'm supposed to sign up. I've heard that before. Um, Thank you. Thank you for saying yes when I said yes to myself. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I said love and blessings, and I cannot wait for you to all hear more of my guests' Birth Your Medicine stories. And maybe you are someone who wants to share your story. Reach out to me. I'd love to have coffee with you and do a recording. Blessings and love. Thank you.